ADHD is becoming a much more common thing for adults, especially moms, to be diagnosed with. We have so much going on in our brains, and often it can feel like it's very hard to focus on them. Today, we're going to explore what ADHD is, how to know whether or not you have it, and how it impacts your nervous system and emotional regulation if you do have ADHD. Welcome to Health, Harmony, and Happiness with Kathy. I'm your host, Kathy Stricker. I'm a state patrol wife, mama to 3 lively kiddos, a yoga teacher, certified NLP coach, and an energetic rhythms expert. As an energetic rhythms coach, I help action-taking women use their body's rhythms and the moon's cycle to optimize productivity and avoid burnout without letting their desire to remain in control alter their focus. And this podcast is all about doing just that and perhaps a bit more so that you can create your own path to health, harmony, and happiness. So come along with me, and may this episode serve as a nudge to discover tools that could help you on your path towards more intentional living. Enjoy the show. Hey friends, welcome to episode 79. Phew! It has definitely been a minute since I've been here and gotten an episode out to you. Life has been in full swing, as it often is in the summer months when you have kids at home, and simply because summer is the time of year that represents growth, abundance, and movement outward. And that has definitely been the rhythm of my life lately. And that is the only reason I actually haven't gotten a podcast out to you. I do all the production and everything myself here. I don't outsource it. Someday, hopefully, I will have help with that. But for now, it's all me, and I'm a one-woman show. So please bear with me when things don't go exactly as I would want them to, or as I would hope they would go. But it's just all lessons in also reminding me of the flow that happens. And right now, life and family has just been a little bit fuller. I don't know if that's the word, more full. I don't know how it goes, than I would naturally anticipate it to be, or would hope it would be. But it is, and I have had some quality time with my kids and just, running kids, taking care of kids, and things that come with also running a household, as well as taking care of myself for sure without feeling guilty about it. And that takes paying attention to what my body is doing, as well as what nature's rhythms are doing, both the moon and the seasons. Once you're aware of nature's rhythms and you start to pay attention to your own rhythms, you can begin to use them to your advantage, so that when times of heightened activity or even stress are in your life, kind of like what's been going on in my life these days. I wouldn't say it's all been stressful. It's just been heightened activity. But so when those times come into your life, then you know yourself well enough to know how to respond to your needs or maintain the practices that you have to keep you in flow in life. Then those stressful times don't seem quite as intense. And part of that is because you are trusting something bigger than just your own thoughts or analysis, or maybe over-analysis, as it historically has been in my case, maybe yours too, of the events. One of the ways that you can honor your rhythms is by celebrating them. Not ignoring them, but celebrating them. And with the summer solstice coming up next Wednesday, I'm going to be hosting a solstice celebration of rhythms. It's an in-person event, and it will consist of a short nature hike and yoga class at the local lake, along with a little ritual to celebrate not only the full bloom and abundance of summer, but also the abundance of your life over the past season. It's a time to reflect and celebrate all that you've put out there or become aware of over the past year, or maybe even just the past spring. It should be a lovely evening, and I'm looking forward to it. So I will drop a link in the show notes for you to check it out if you are interested. If you don't live in this area and you still want to participate in your own solstice celebration of rhythms, I'm creating a download that will walk you through what it might look like for you to honor the energy of summer, which happens to also be the peak of nature's energy. right? Okay, on with the show. This is the first in a two-part series. It was actually one interview that I broke into 2 episodes because there is just so much packed into this one episode. You'll catch the rest of it in a couple weeks when I go live with that. Enjoy the show. Today, I'm interviewing Tracy Nolin Beerman with the Vision Driven Mom with ADHD podcast. Tracy is a certified life mastery consultant who has passionately bundled her experience with decades of yoga, meditation, mind-body work, life transformation coaching, and her own experiment with life as an ADHD mom. She helps moms with ADHD declutter their minds and forge an empowered path forward through her powerful workshops, courses, programs, and the Vision Driven Mom with ADHD podcast, even if they have a million other things in their brilliant, unique minds. She wholeheartedly believes that it's possible to have ADHD without ADHD having you. Welcome, Tracy.
Thank you, Kathy. Thanks for having me. I'm excited about today.
Absolutely. I am too. I feel like you and I kind of speak to a lot of the same or similar people, similar women out there, right? I don't have specifically ADHD in my niche, I guess, or in the group of people that I'm talking to, but I'm sure there are a lot of those moms out there who actually do have ADHD, either diagnosed or undiagnosed, that fall into this group of women who work with, this group of women who are do it all kind of women who feel the need to overfunction at times and need the reminder that it's okay to underfunction a little bit. And kind of that warrior type woman who has always done it and is going to keep powering through and pushing through, even if it's uncomfortable, even in your case, if she is all over the place at times. And I know there are times when I am that way. I'm all over the place and it's really hard to focus. Now, what I can relate that to with energetic rhythms is that sometimes that's cyclical, and that also plays into, and I'm sure you can speak to this a little bit more, but it also speaks into where our hormones are with our cycle.
Absolutely.
And so when you have ADHD and then you compound the fact that there are times of the month that you naturally don't have as much focus, you got to do a little bit of extra work to stay focused, to do the things that you want to actually do, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Hormones play a huge part in ADHD and kind of in magnifying everything.
I would imagine. And then not only hormones, but also because I speak to the moon and the universe and nature's cycles around us, we feel all of that energy around us all the time. So when you're a person with ADHD, and we're going to get into what is ADHD here in just a moment, but when you're a person with ADHD and you're feeling the outside pull of the energy around you, as well as your internal energy and those hormones, I can understand how sometimes it might really feel like you can't get anything done, or you can't do anything, or you're kind of lost or floundering in this world. Would you say that that's true?
Absolutely. And I think that we've spoken about this before, but I am highly, highly, highly sensitive to the moon and to the cycles of the moon. And I've always been, and it used to be like my well, we can talk more about it, but used to feel like I was always like, there was always some kind of energy, whether it was my menstrual cycle or the moon cycle, or, and my ADHD, which I didn't know about, but there was always this energy that I was like, oh my gosh, like the roller coaster.
Yeah. Yeah. When did you learn that you had ADHD?
So I've known for about 20 years.
Wow. What is ADHD and why do people need to know about it?
So technically, it's a neurological disorder. And I say with air quotes because I hate that word, disorder.
So what would you call it? I just listened to you on a podcast talk about what you would call it if you didn't call it a neurological disorder.
Oh, yeah. Was it the creative?
I think so.
Creative
Yeah.
Attentionality. I was just thinking about that. Yeah, I would totally call it creative attentionality. ADHD stands for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And if you have ADHD, or if you know anything about it, or you're starting to explore it, it is absolutely not a deficit, right? What would be a better definition, I'll get into the creative attentionality, but would be, it's not that we have a deficit of attention, it's that we are getting signals, we are feeling everything, right? We don't necessarily have a meter for what's the most important thing. Does that make sense? So it's not a deficit, because we can hyper focus like no one's business, but then we can also have the complete opposite of not being able to focus. So it's not, and we're focusing on like these minuscule things that mean nothing, but we don't have a meter, I guess. That's kind of the, you can go and you can look up ADHD, and it's all this clinical, it's in the DSM, right? Which is the diagnostic, I don't know what the for psychology, right? But if you ask somebody who has it, it's different for all of us, which makes it really difficult, because some of us there are different types. There's the hyperactivity, which is one type. There's inattentive, which is another type. And then there's the combo type, which is hyperactive and inattentive. So you're talking like this really big, it's very, very different for every single person. There are hormones, and there are different sensitivities, and there's the way that we were brought up. Like, there are all these different ways, and my sister and I both express differently as well. So it's an interesting diagnosis, but incredibly helpful, because then you have information.
How does someone go about getting diagnosed then? Is it something they can take like an online kind of questionnaire to help walk them through, like, these are some of the signs and symptoms, or do they need to seek out a medical professional to help?
So you can do both. I highly recommend getting a diagnosis so that you have the information. Some people are hesitant because they don't want the label, but I don't see it as a label, Kathy. I see it as information, and then you get to decide what direction to take. Some people take the medical, like the drug route, and there's therapy, and there are skills, like life skills, that like what you teach.
Well, I think that's,
you teach life skills, right?
And I think that's a lot of what you do too. And I think that, so say someone wants to just explore it, they do a questionnaire online or something. Mm-hmm. They realize, oh, I've got these tendencies. Even if they don't have that formal diagnosis, they can certainly find use in the skills that you teach, in the skills that I teach, on habits, on just performing. I don't want to say performing, because performing sounds like we're performing in life, but on just how to do things, how to get things done and flow with it, instead of feeling like,
yes,
exactly. Right. Instead of feeling like there's just chaos around you all the time.
Right.
I mean, I've been listening to your podcast, and it's just filled with beautiful tips on how to do all of those things and how to manage. And I'm thinking, I don't even know if I have ADHD. I've never even thought it as a possibility. A lot of people I know, like within the past year, it's been coming into my awareness a lot more. And a lot of people have been like, oh, well, I have ADHD now. I have ADHD. And I'm thinking, what is going on? Where were these diagnoses a long time ago? Or why is there such an influx? Maybe, it feels like there's an influx of people being diagnosed.
There is, especially, of course, I work in the mom world, right? This is my world. The pandemic, the pandemic did lots of things. The pandemic brought to light everything that was not working, right? In all areas of life, like worldwide, right?
Yeah.
So it also brought to light that many of us were, especially when you have ADHD, we tend to do what's called masking. And it's not lying or trying to be something that you're not. It's just that we're trying to fit into this world full of people. Our world was designed for neurotypical people.
Mm-hmm.
We have neurodiverse minds. Where our minds are, so most of the world is typical. It's the way the world, the society was developed, and the things that we do. Time, for instance, is that's one of the things that we really struggle with. But I really believe ever since the pandemic brought everything to light. I can't even tell you. For myself, I had it all together. I've got my rhythms. I've got my the things that I teach, the things that I've been doing for decades. But having all the people at home, I went nuts, right?
Yeah.
Because I was off my game. Like everything was different. Everything changed. And I think this is one of the reasons, Kathy, that we're now seeing like this influx of people getting diagnosed. And I don't know if like Adderall, which is one of the medications that's prescribed for ADHD, like there's been a shortage, and because of all this influx. Now, here's one thing I want to say about, you were asking me, how do you go about, like, what do you do if you think that you have ADHD? For one thing, the online tests, definitely, if you can see if it relates to you. And then working with someone, having an evaluation done by someone who is well versed in ADHD. And I'll tell you why. Before I was diagnosed with clinical depression, anxiety, and bipolar disorder. Right. So, and I was on all of these different medications and, like all of these things that were wrong with me. And I never really, for one thing, the medications didn't work for me. And some of them actually made me feel crazier than I actually already felt. And because they weren't the right thing for me. I was misdiagnosed. Right.
Yeah.
So then when I finally was diagnosed, I was like, I am so done. I am so done with drugs. I am so done. And I kind of let it sit for a long time. I kind of avoided it. And then once I started embracing it, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is why, and this is why, and this is why. It was kind of explained my whole life when I started really, really diving into it. So I just said a lot, but I think the most important point that I wanted to make is that if you go to I would not recommend going to your doctor for an ADHD diagnosis.
Okay.
The number one, support that you might get if you go to somebody who is not well versed in ADHD is drugs. And that's not it. It works for some. It works really brilliantly for some. But drugs, Kathy, right? The drugs are not going to change your belief system. The drugs are not going to change your relationships or anything like that. Like the drugs can help with focus or anxiety, depending on what you're struggling with. But you need like different supports. You need the skills. Sometimes you need a therapist or a coach.
Whole bag, yes, like a community around you of tricks, of things to do, basically.
I love this. Is a bag of tricks. Yes.
Yeah.
That's it.
Your tool bag. If you don't want to call it a bag of tricks, it's a tool bag.
It's a tool bag. Yeah. I call it the toolkit. Yes. Exactly.
Yes. See? Yeah. Okay. So I had another question then. How do you find someone who is an ADHD professional or someone who is primarily works with that? Like, do you just go to a therapist? Do you just go, is there a place that you can go online and look up, hey, I want someone who actually specializes in ADHD?
So you can, these days, especially it's more available, but the ADHD professionals, the people who are the practitioners who specialize in ADHD, they are taxed right now. I mean, mental health is taxed, first of all.
Yeah.
Sure. But they are out there, right? So I think it's is it Psychology Today? I wish I can't remember the if you ask me at the end, I'll look it up, but there's a website that you can go to that has you can enter
it's
different
Psychology Today, and you can filter down to different
then it is Psychology Today
specifications. Yeah. Yep.
Right. So
Perfect. So
that's helpful. I would also, maybe if there are, so CHADD, CHADD is an organization for children and adults with ADHD. So you can find a chapter in your area and start asking around. What is it? ADDA, which is the adults with ADD. That's another organization. So these organizations have chapters everywhere, and you might just start getting into local communities and start asking around. Or,
okay.
you might even go to your doctor, or if you have a therapist, and hey, I'm exploring this. Do you know anyone who is well versed? And I say that because I had been to so many psychologists and psychiatrists, and I was misdiagnosed, and I could have, like you don't get those decades back.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And you treat those diagnoses different than what you would treat
Yes.
ADHD. And your
Yes.
mind mentally treats them differently as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you're just doing different things for them. So I can definitely see how, like, if you've got this misdiagnosis of something else, that you're not actually going to be helping yourself. You're not actually going to be getting what you need.
And here's the thing too, is that with ADHD, it's so complex. Anxiety and depression, often they're called comorbidities, which I hate that word, but there are also conditions that can come alongside of ADHD.
That's what I was just going to ask. Is it like a both and?
Yes,
how does that work?
It is an ADHD and, right? So I do have anxiety, right? But I have ADHD as well. So just treating the anxiety that's not the answer, because I also have depressive moments. I mean, my energy goes all over the place. So the longer you wait to get the diagnosis, or if you are misdiagnosed, the more intense those disorders get, right? So the depression gets deeper, the anxiety gets deeper. And actually, now that I'm saying this, I can think back to, I think my kids were in elementary school. My youngest is going to high school next year. But I started having panic attacks. Right. So the anxiety that I was feeling was finally just like it was growing and growing, where it was in my body. Right. Scary. I thought I was having heart attacks and all of that. It was so interesting. Once I understood, oh, you're having a panic attack. I think I stopped having them.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just a panic attack. Oh, well, I know what to do for anxiety. It was an interesting thing. So sometimes it's just the knowing, okay. There are things that I can do for that.
Yeah. And it kind of takes the pressure off, or it relieves some of that. I don't know what to do. I'm feeling this in my body. My body feels out of control. And,
right.
Oh, but wait, I know what this is. I can name it. I can identify it. I can say yes to it. And then I can move forward with how to nurture it and how to nurture it in my body.
Beautifully said right there. Yeah.
So is there an age that is too old to be diagnosed with ADHD?
No. Mm-mm.
So someone in their 60s, say they've felt this way for a long time.
And there's a myth that ADHD is a childhood disorder, and it's not. Kids with ADHD, I mean, kids don't know what to do with their bodies. They don't know what to do with their energy. Like that's across the board. Right. I mean, most kids, they'll
have you seen them around a full moon?
They're learning. Absolutely. I was a preschool teacher before I had kids. Yes. Full moon. Are you kidding me? But it's not a childhood disorder. We don't grow out of it. We learn coping mechanisms, healthy or not. One of my coping mechanisms in high school was drinking and drugs, right? Which can also be a It is a way, it's unfortunately a way that people with ADHD, that it's self-medicating, right? So it's not a childhood disorder. It is something that continues. And like I said, as you grow and as you continue on not being diagnosed or misdiagnosed, those things grow with you, right? The depression or anxiety,
Yeah,
or
that's a beautiful way to
whatever.
say it. The other comorbidities grow with you.
They do. Yeah.
Oh, man.
And you said something about spirituality. I Now, when I look back on my life, my spiritual journey, which started decades ago, my actual spiritual journey started when I was a kid, really, with my mother would give me all these amazing books. But my spiritual journey really began, and continues as a way to support myself and my ADHD. Right. There's got to be something. I know that there's got to be something else. And it led me to what I do now. So I'm grateful. But it was my spiritual journey started at God, I need help. Right? Please help me. And I hear that
Very
too,
much
that a lot of people kind of start
self-understanding.
It's a self-understanding. That's exactly it.
So I've heard you say that people with ADHD have a different kind of nervous system. What do you mean by that?
So the autonomic nervous system, which is the sympathetic, parasympathetic, no, I get them mixed up sometimes, but the rest and digest and the fight or flight, right? Those are the two responses of the autonomic nervous system. In people with a neurotypical people with a again, air quotes, normal nervous system, it shifts automatically. Really, we shift between the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system more easily and more naturally. With ADHD, with a neurodiverse nervous system, we sometimes get stuck. Like we'll get into a fight or flight and we can't get out, right? Or we're just shifting. It's not as smooth, right? So we have to learn our nervous system. We have to learn our triggers. We have to learn, we have to really know ourselves really well so that we can manage that. So we can be able to shift back, shift back into the rest. And what do I need to do? That's the toolkit, right?
Yeah.
What helps me? Something that I can bring in immediately. And the more you know yourself, the more you know your rhythm, the more you know your triggers, the easier it is to shift back. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's about emotional regulation and learning how to smoothly transition as best you can, because that doesn't come naturally to you.
Yeah. I mean, we still do transition, but it's not as smooth. The shift is not as easy, and we need
what might it
more
look
help.
like?
And here's the thing. With people with ADHD, we tend to struggle with what's called the executive function skills. So things like memory, things like tasks, starting them, maintaining them, completing them, distraction, and just like the things that we need, especially in mom life, right? All of those things that we need to prioritizing, organization, all of those things. Emotional regulation is one of those executive function skills, right? But what I do, and I think that what makes my work a little bit different is that we're going to start with the emotional regulation, because if we are not emotionally regulated, we can't focus. We can't recall things. We can't organize. Like we have to, because we're stuck in that fight or flight, or in that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Like your
Absolutely.
brain almost goes offline when you're in that fight or flight response. So you want to bring your brain back online, so then you can, that focus and all of the other things.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, what does that look like when you have those executive function struggles? Like what,
It's
and
hard as
you kind
hell.
of answered it, yeah. But what does it look like when someone is stuck and they're not, I don't know, paint that picture.
Yeah. I mean, the most vivid picture for me is the pandemic. So all of that time at home. Right. Yeah. And so we also kept our kids, they had the option to go back to school. I think it was like for the last half at some point, but I have aging parents. So we were trying to keep and they're all compromised. They all have health issues. So we kept our kids home so that the parents were isolated. Anyway, we were home for a long time.
Yeah.
And trying to manage I have a business, right? I have a life. Yeah. And managing my business, my kids' life, and we live in a 1,400 square foot home, right? Which is perfect for us. But when all of us were home, my husband was working, my kids were doing virtual school, not being able to, I was spread so thin, and I already have focus issues. I was just a basket case, right? I was kind of in a perpetual state of fight or flight, trying to put out all the fires. You know what? That's a great example of what that looks like. Whack-a-mole, right? I'm playing a game of whack-a-mole all the time, like trying to just whack down the moles just as quickly as they come.
That's a beautiful
and do it with a spoon.
Right? Yeah.
Not doing it.
You don't have that big mallet.
Effectively.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, man.
When you are able to emotionally regulate and bring yourself back to this, the rest or digest, or as much as you can, then you don't have to play the whack-a-mole. You can tend to the things more easily. Now, I'm not saying that, tend to your nervous system and you can do everything perfectly. It's not that way, right? We still have executive function challenges, but the more you have tools and tricks, and I call them supports, you have your supports in place, your ADHD supports in place, then it's easier, makes life easier.
Sure. The more knowledge you have and the more self-awareness, we keep going back to that. Like, it's about self-awareness. And
that's exactly it.
When you start on that spiritual path, that's what it is. It's self-understanding, and it's the awareness of how you move through this life and who you are. And when you don't have that, you're just going about your business, not even realizing that everything is interconnected. And that's kind of the root of mindfulness, right? We are all connected, and our actions impact everything else in life. Tracy and I continued our conversation with the keys to staying focused when living with ADHD, and why living a vision-driven life is crucial to living with ADHD in the next part of this series. Tracy and I continued our conversation with the keys to staying focused when living with ADHD, and why living a vision-driven life is crucial to living with ADHD in the next part of this series. Tracy shares tools and practices from her Vibe Care toolkit that you can use to stay ahead of your emotions so they don't get away from you, which is all super beautiful. And I will include links to Tracy's contact information, as well as her ADHD supports guide for moms with ADHD, and some other helpful resources we mentioned in the show notes. You can grab the show notes at KarenYogaWellness.com/podcast 79. The link will also be in the episode description, I guess. If you are curious, or if you or someone you might love might have, if you're curious if you might have ADHD or someone you love might have ADHD, it might be worth seeking out a medical professional who can help you look further into this. It's a treatable condition, and as Tracy shared, with the right tools, it can absolutely be manageable. It's simply another way of knowing yourself more deeply and knowing how to respond to the things that come your way into this world. So it's all about what we talk about on this show, with deepening your self-understanding and getting to know yourself better, and then having the tools to support you in doing that so that you don't feel like you're surrounded by chaos all the time. Because heavens knows, we are always going to have things going on around us. We're going to have chaos around us. But if we have the right tools and the right viewpoint and perspective of how to look at things, then you can continue to navigate and flow with your time, energy, and focus, even when things don't go exactly as you'd hoped. Until next time, I'm Kathy Stricker, helping you find and use the rhythms around you to flow with life. Cheers to cultivating your own version of health, harmony, and happiness in your life.